It's just like a hint of a green that leaves people guessing, if you know what I mean. Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another video in my full month of your video ideas and suggestions. Today's video is going to be an especially fun one because we are talking about eyeshadow palettes. You guys know how much I love my eyeshadow palettes. Today's video suggestion came from Emily. Emily recently saw Morgan Turner here on YouTube do a video titled something along the lines of "If I could only keep one palette from each brand," and I love this idea so very much. I could watch someone rank their eyeshadow palettes in a variety of different ways all day long, every day for the rest of my life. Okay, maybe that's an exaggeration, but I really love these types of videos. I've seen quite a few people do different takes on this style of video, and today I'm going to kind of put my own little spin on it and do my #1 palette from each of my top 10 favorite eyeshadow brands. I had so much fun digging through my collection this morning, and I'm going to admit it was even a little bit stressful when I really had to get down to picking just one, especially from a couple of brands that I tend to like most of their eyeshadow palettes. It was a struggle, but I have narrowed it down to my #1 palette from each of my favorite brands. We're going to get into it today. Before we do, special welcome to any of you that are new to my channel. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Of course, if you do, give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe before you leave. And with that said, let's get into the very first one. Alright guys, so these are not necessarily in any particular order, but I will be saving some of my especially favorite makeup brands for the end. But we're going to start off with an oldie but a goodie, and it is from Tarte. If I could only keep one eyeshadow palette from Tarte, it would definitely be the Tartelette in Bloom palette. Now, I don't own a lot of Tarte palettes, but this is one of the palettes that I've had in my collection for the longest time, and it is still my very favorite one from Tarte. It's very simple, very basic, very neutral, but I absolutely love this one. I never use this palette and come away being disappointed. It always does a really good job at just giving me a simple, basic, everyday kind of look. It smells incredible despite the fact that I've had this specific palette for over 2 years now, and the packaging is just so adorable. Love this one from Tarte, definitely my #1. Next up is Urban Decay, and I'm sure if you have been watching my videos for a while, you'll probably guess this one correctly. It is the Urban Decay Born to Run palette. At one point I did crown this my #1 palette in my entire collection. I don't know if that still holds true. It's definitely still up there, but I'm not sure that it's #1 overall because I've tried out a lot of eyeshadow palettes, especially over the last year. But that said, this is still by far my favorite palette from Urban Decay. This is the epitome of what I love in an eyeshadow palette. Has a little bit of color and creativity with plenty of neutrals. There is so much variety inside this palette. I think probably above any other palette in my collection, the versatility inside this palette is the greatest, or the widest, if that's the right word. You have everything that you would need to create any type of eye look, light or deep, colorful or neutral, and there's just so many fun combinations inside here. This is just a classic. There's a reason that so many people on YouTube have been talking highly of this thing for years and years. I've heard from a lot of you guys that own this palette and absolutely love it as well. It's just such a fun palette. The quality is great, and I absolutely love this thing. The next brand that we're going to talk about is one that I don't hear a lot of people talking about here on YouTube, and it's Focallure Cosmetics. I tried them out for the first time in the fall of 2019, and I really fell in love with this brand. There are some things about their formula I don't absolutely love, but I absolutely love their matte formula, and the #1 palette from them is this one right here. This is their Impressionism palette. This is an all matte palette, and it is meant to dupe or replicate the Natasha Safari palette. I love this color story. It is so beautiful. The formula of this I find to be really great. It lasts really well on my eyes. I love the different colors inside here. Nothing in here is overly bright or bold, but there's quite a bit of color in here. This is just my idea of color. When things are like subdued a little bit and kind of grungy, even a little bit dusty, that's just how I like my colors to be. I love the variety of outer corner shades in here. You get a perfect deep kind of cranberry red. This color right here I'm wearing in the very most outer corner of my lid today. Can you see that deep eggplant color? It is so beautiful. It is one of the few deep purples that I put on my eye and it doesn't turn pink. It maintains its very rich but cool purple undertone. It is so stunning. I love the different shades of green inside here. I love these transition shades. The yellows, the oranges, the camel colors. There's a lot of good basic browns in here. And if you just combine this with even your face highlight for a little pop of shimmer somewhere, it's one of the few matte palettes that I'm happy to reach into something else if I want a shimmer, because I just love the color story of this one so much. I have heard some mixed reviews from you guys that have tried out Focallure Cosmetics. Some of you have said you really enjoyed it. Some of you had said you didn't really like their formula very much. I will say I think that their matte formula is superior to their shimmer formula. Their shimmers are quite sheer. They don't pack as much of a punch as I typically like my shimmers to pack, but that's another reason that this one gets the #1 spot. I just absolutely love this thing. Moving on to Persona Cosmetics. Now Persona has what I think is one of the very best eyeshadow formulas on the market today. Now they don't have a ton of palettes to pick from, but I had to mention them in this video because their formula is so good and the palettes that they do have are so well curated. I really love them all, but the one that I had to mention today is the original Identity palette. So many of you guys would probably agree with me in that this is such a fantastic palette. The lid colors in here are some of the best that I own in my entire collection. I think if you are someone that has mature lids, I feel like I say this every time I pull this palette out, but truly, if you like shimmer, but you find some shimmer formulas just to be too chunky or too glittery for you, this is such a refined shimmer formula that still packs a mega punch. It is lovely. The mattes are extremely pigmented, but so easy to blend. I honestly can't think of anything negative to say about this palette. It is just such a perfect neutral palette. This green shimmer right here, Bombshell, is one of my favorite shades in my entire collection. I love this type of a color lately. It's just kind of the vibe that I have been going for lately, and it's not too green. It's just like a hint of a green that leaves people guessing, if you know what I mean. The richness that you can get out of these matte shades is insane. They will give you so much depth. If you love a good smoky eye, this is a great palette for a smoky look, but you can certainly use them light-handed and give yourself just a tiny bit of depth or even a powder liner. Persona is one of the brands that when they do release an eyeshadow palette, and I'm strongly hoping that this year they will release an Identity 3, I don't even really care what it looks like. I will buy it because I love their formula that much, but this is definitely my #1 choice for them. Next, let's talk about some BH Cosmetics. Now, BH Cosmetics is another brand that is a relatively new try for me. I tried them out for the first time in the fall of 2019 and fell instantly in love with their eyeshadows and their formula and, of course, their price point. But of all the palettes of theirs that I have tried, the one that I would have to put in the #1 spot is this one right here. This is the Zodiac Love Signs palette. Now I went back and forth between the original Zodiac palette and this one because I absolutely love both of them. The original one is a little bit more cool toned. The reason I didn't go with that one though is because there are a lot of matte purples in that one, and I just don't wear purple all that often, which I'm realizing is kind of ironic because I'm wearing purple today, but purple mattes especially are not a color that I reach for very often. This one, however, I think has such a perfect color story. I love the warm tones inside of here, but you still get a couple of pops of color, a couple pops of cool tone, and I just am such a fan of the BH Cosmetics formula, especially the baked shimmer formula. I really love it. It's not quite as heavy on the lid as their original shimmer formula, which I do also enjoy. It's just a much more thin and dry and refined shadow formula, and when you wet it, it is so stunning. I can't get enough of it. I love this palette. These golden peach shades right here are some of my favorite. This silvery taupe color right here is just everything to me. It is so beautiful paired with any other colors inside here. I love this fun pop of blue. I love this greenish bronze. Such beautiful and interesting shade. The matte formula is really beautiful as well. The packaging, I've heard some people say, is kind of obnoxiously bulky, but I think it's kind of cute. It doesn't bother me. I don't mind having this take up my entire desk full of space because when I reach for this palette, I'm kind of in the mood to just play and have fun with my eyeshadow, and that's all I really care about. So I highly recommend this palette. It is my #1 from BH Cosmetics. Let's move on to Huda Beauty. Now, I don't own any of Huda's larger palettes, but I have built quite the collection of her Obsessions palettes. I am totally obsessed with them. I absolutely love them. But the one that I would have to rank at #1 is this one right here. This is the Nude Light Obsessions palette, and I love this palette so very much. It's a very unique color story that doesn't seem like it would be that unique. I mean, it seems like kind of just a simple, basic, light pastel, pinkish purple kind of palette, which I know we've all seen pinks and purples before, but there is something special about the shades inside here, especially these shimmery shades. If you look at them in person, they have such a unique shift to them that I absolutely love. I've heard a few people say they didn't like the shimmers inside here or didn't think they were as good as some of her others, but I absolutely love them. They work amazingly well for me. I think they are so beautiful. So this is the palette that I'm wearing along with the Impressionism palette, and this is the shade that I have just right through my crease that is identical to this corner shade in the Focallure palette. They pretty much swatch and perform identical to each other. I did also throw this very light sheer kind of bubblegum pink just right above my crease. Then I went in with the Dusty Mauve shade. Then I took this shimmery purple and tapped that on the center part of the lid, and then went in with this kind of iridescent golden pink in my inner corner, and that's pretty much my whole look for today. and I love how it came out. This is such a good palette for spring. If you're into those kind of pastel, iridescent, kind of fairy-esque shades, this is a great palette for that. And I don't actually have a lot of pastel shades in my collection, which is why this one is coming in at number 1. The formula works great for me. The color story is amazing. And one bonus, the packaging on this thing is incredible. Perhaps one of the best eyeshadow packages in my entire collection. And it's nice and small and compact and travel friendly, which is so important right now. But I love this palette. It's made quite a few appearances in a lot of the ranking videos that I've done over the last several months. It's just perfection. Now, I cannot do this video without talking about a Natasha Denona palette. I don't own a lot of Natasha Denona palettes. In fact, my Natasha Denona collection recently went from 2 to 3. I did pick up this little mini retro palette this last week, but that's not the one that I'm ranking today, partly because it's small, partly because I haven't tried it out enough yet. But the one I had to put in this video is the Sunrise palette. I am such a fan of this palette. It is a very fun and unique color story compared to what else I have in my collection. Also the things that I typically reach for. I am so happy that I picked up this palette because initially I thought this color story intimidated me a little bit and was maybe a little bit too bold and bright. But if you take away this outer half of the palette, you have a good amount of neutrals in here. And I always say this, any bright palette that also gives you some neutrals gives you versatility and gives you the ability to adjust how bold you want to go with your palettes. And I can get some incredible looks out of this palette that are not too far out of my comfort zone. I love Natasha Denona's formula. I don't know that I think it's worth the price tag, but it is a really nice formula, especially her mattes. They are just so incredibly creamy and blendable and easy to work with. But as far as the palettes from her that I own, this one is my favorite. So we are down to my last 3, and I think I can pretty confidently say that these are my 3 favorite eyeshadow brands. Let's start off with Anastasia Beverly Hills. Now this was a tough one because in general when I think of my ABH eyeshadows, the ones that I think are kind of iconic are her neutral palettes, specifically the Sultry and the Soft Glam. Those were definite contenders today, but I had to go with the Jackie Aina palette. There's just something really special about this palette. Now it is definitely not an all neutral palette, but if you see right here, if you take out this little center section right here, there are more neutrals inside here than maybe you think at first glance. And even these colorful shades right here can easily be worked into a more neutral look. I love working a small pop of color into a more neutral look just to give it a little bit of something special and something different. The formula of ABH's eyeshadows in general is amazing. I absolutely love it, but this one, there's something special about this formula. These perform incredibly well. Every single shade inside here I think is beautiful. I am always a fan of ABH's transition shades. They are some of my favorites. Her deep matte browns are always incredible. This one is no exception. And then there's just a few really unique shades in here that just look at the shine on these. They're so incredibly stunning. So this is my number 1 palette from Anastasia, and that is saying something because I really love so many of her palettes. We are down to my last 2 brands, and these were by far the ones that I had the hardest time narrowing down to an actual number 1. There were so many that were awfully close, and even now I'm kind of going back and forth on, am I sure about that? Do I not want to pick this one instead? But I'm gonna stick with what my gut said, but I do want to go through the runners up for you guys. First off, Juvia's Place. You probably know if you've been watching my videos for a while that Juvia's Place has some of my very favorite eyeshadow palettes on the planet. They are incredible, they are fun, they are unique, their packaging is amazing, their formula is great, their price point is fantastic, and I love all of the palettes from Juvia's Place that I own, but there were 3 that I went kind of back and forth between. So I want to start off by sharing with you guys the runners-up. So this is one of the runners-up, the Magic Mini. This is such a fun palette. It is my, if I ever want to add something unique or special, colorful to a look or to a different eyeshadow palette, this is the one that I will go for. It is such a fun palette to play with. I absolutely love this one, but the reason I couldn't give this the number 1 spot is for me personally, this is not really a standalone palette. It's more of an addition palette to something a little bit more neutral to add something special. But man, you guys, this is such a fun palette to play with. If you're into a little bit of color, it's amazing. But probably one that was even closer, my next runner-up would have to be the Nubian 2 palette. You guys probably know this is one of my favorite palettes of all time. This is everything that I want in a good palette. It has a little bit of color, a lot of neutral, and a lot of versatility. And now I'm kind of doubting myself. This is one of my favorite palettes still, even though it's not ranked at number 1. But I love this one. I will forever love this one. It is amazing. So maybe now you all can guess my number 1 palette. Say it with me. It's got to be the Juvia's Place Nomad palette. This is a relatively newer palette to me, but this is a palette I just decided I cannot live without. I love this color story. It is very unique, which is why I'm picking this as my number one, because it's different than everything else that I own in my collection. I love these brown toned greens over here. They are so stunning. I love these warm tones right here. Perfect chocolate brown and the most beautiful lid shade. I feel like I talk about this all the time, but I'm going to keep talking about it because look at that. I could honestly stare at this color for hours. It is just so pretty. It is my ultimate lid shade, and I know I've said this like 6 times, but seriously, you guys, look at that shimmer. Oh, those are all the reasons that this would have to be my number one palette. It is just so amazing. If you're into these kind of tones, which I definitely am right now, this is fantastic. Last, let's talk about some ColourPop. I love my ColourPop palettes. I love all of them, and I've got quite a few of them, but there were 4 that kind of were in the running for the top spot. But let's go over the runners-up. First off, this one right here, the So Jaded palette. This is such a fun and beautiful and creative and unique palette and color story. If you are into jewel tones, this is the palette for you. Any jewel tone that you would ever want would be inside this palette. It is stunning, it is beautiful, it is really fun to play with, but there are 2 things that kept it from being in my number one spot. First off, I'm not a fan of the pressed glitters inside here, and the second one being that I wish that this had a better warm crease shade. I feel like most of the crease shades that you get in here are jewel tones, and the one brown that you get is very much a cooler toned brown, which is beautiful, but most of the time I like a really warm, rich crease color, and that's why I couldn't put this one at number one, but I do love this palette. The next runner up is this one right here. This is the Through My Eyes palette. This is a really fun palette. It is quite colorful, but also neutral at the same time. This is the perfect summer palette in my opinion. You got some beautiful shimmers inside here, some good basic lid shades. Love this bronze right here. Oh, look at these. My fingers are quite dirty. Again, the one thing I have to hold against this palette, even though I absolutely love this crease shade, which is more of like a red toned eggplant, I'm just such a fan of a rich matte brown that I can't have my number one palette not have that in it. So that's the reason I'm not including this as my number one, but it's awfully close, you guys, awfully close. So my last runner up from ColourPop is the Going Coconuts palette, another one of my absolute favorites. This is such a great palette. The only reason I can't rank this at number one is you don't get a lot of versatility with the looks that you get from this palette. You get a very good basic look, but I like a palette that's going to give me a little bit more than just a basic look. I will forever love this palette though, but most of the time I want to throw something different or special or colorful or unique into an eye look, and that is the reason that for my number one palette, I had to go with this one. It is the original Dream Street palette. This palette has been around forever. I know so many of you probably have and love this palette or have had it at some point. It is just such a good palette. I have my basics in here. You get 2 perfect transition shades in here. A nice, very rich, very warm, very creamy, smooth brown. And then you get a couple of fun pops in here. You get this terracotta orange, you get this bright kind of matte orangey red. These greens are so fun and unique and beautiful to play with. And they can pair with so many different shades inside here to give you such a beautiful either neutral look with a pop of color or full on colorful look if that's what you're going for. I mean, even though I knew I loved this palette, when I really got down to picking just one, this is the one that I feel like had everything that I wanted in a palette. It's just so good. Sometimes I forget how good it is, but every time I come back to this palette, I'm reminded of how incredible it is, and that is why it is coming in at my number one. Alright you guys, and that is it for my number one eyeshadow palette from all of my favorite eyeshadow brands. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I had so much fun filming this one, even though it was a little bit stressful. But then I reminded myself, this is just a made-up makeup game. It's not that serious. And repeat it to yourself again, Mandy. Your eyeshadow palettes don't have feelings. But I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what your guys' thoughts were on my selections. If you would pick the same thing, maybe if you would pick something different in some of the brands that I talked about that you also have a couple of palettes from. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Again, keep those suggestions coming for my full month of your video ideas. But that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you guys again. I hope that you are all doing well. Sending love to you and your families. One more reminder, if you are new or if you just haven't done it yet, be sure to subscribe before you leave. And that is it for today's video. I cannot wait for the next one, guys. It is going to be quite entertaining. But I hope that you guys have a good one, and I will see you all very soon. Bye. Well curated. Mandy, that's not a word. The vibe that oh my gosh, I can't say this sentence. Okay.
I want this one.
That is a good palette. This is a fun one, huh? Do you like those pictures?
Oh, I like this one.
I like that one too. Isn't it pretty?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, it's really pretty. You like it?
It didn't work enough.
It didn't work enough. Oh, I just ran down the stairs.